On the Millersville University Weather Center, this is student meteorologist Peyton Simmers.
I'm student meteorologist Peter Corman.
And I'm student meteorologist Gabe Keller.
Here with Weather Watch. After a long hiatus, we're back to talk about severe weather that's going to be occurring across the plains today, the south tomorrow, and the southeast on Wednesday. So we're going to go through all 3 days. So let's hop into it. We'll start with the Storm Prediction Center outlooks.
All right, so I'll lead off. So just in the last half hour to an hour ago, the SPC has upgraded their probabilities across Oklahoma and Texas to an enhanced risk. This is a tornado-driven enhanced risk, so you can see they've gone 10%, and they've also added a 30% wind risk. So they're seeing an uptrend versus what they were looking at this morning. And if we take a look at the satellite, I know it's a little bit noisy with I have the streamline layers overlaid. You can see there's already clearing occurring out in western Oklahoma, and that trend is going to continue out into central Oklahoma and northern Texas. But the reason I have the streamlines highlighted is I want to talk about the direction of the wind. You can see over the area where they're expecting tornadoes and damaging winds later today, you have winds coming out of the south. And if we look at the soundings this morning from 12Z, we could look at Dallas, Fort Worth first. We can see that about 12Z this morning, it was 57 degrees at the dew point of 54. Highs in Dallas today are in the low 70s, I believe, so they're expecting that to increase. But if we look to the south here, we bring it down to Corpus Christi, we can see kind of what the air mass that we'll be dealing with up in the risk area later today is looking like. Since we have those southerly winds, what we're seeing down here is going to be advected northward towards the Red River. We can see that already temperatures at Corpus Christi at 12Z were 72 and the dew point was 67. So we can kind of expect that to move upwards into the DFW region later today, as highlighted by those southerly winds. You can see the southerly winds are moving right over Corpus Christi, and they'll be making their way up into the threat area later on this afternoon. So it's definitely looking like we could see a few tornadoes. It looks like a pretty linear storm mode, but the SBC saw enough to upgrade the risk into an enhanced risk today.
Yeah, one thing I do want to pull up is the station plots. Where is it? There it is. The station plots. You can see out in western Oklahoma, these dew points are really rising quick. We have dew point of 56, 53, 54. So again, it's coming right off the Gulf, and it's going to keep streaming. So yeah, this is a pretty, and it looks like this is going to be a nocturnal threat.
Yes.
So, and we look at a couple of the models. This is the newest CSU. CSU is not so much on board with this as some of the, like the SPC. It only has like a 2% TOR, 15 wind, and a 15 hail. Very small 15 wind. But the HREF, the high resolution ensemble, has a lot more bold tornado risk. It has a 15% tornado risk across southern Oklahoma. And the wind risk, it even has a 15, and the hail, it has, I believe, also a 15. So pretty decent setup. So yeah, I mean, we can hop into the models with this too.
Yeah, we can go ahead and hop into the models to it. It looks like it's going to be a quick transition to a more linear mode here. If I go over to, we'll start with the HRRR here.
If you want to zoom in on that too, Peter.
Yeah, we'll run it out through 16Z.
There we go.
So as we look at our good old HRRR model, you can see there's not going to be much throughout the day today. It's going to be, you're going to have those clouds over there, eventually breaking up a bit. And the event really starts going overnight. And you see it was moving to like 3 or 4Z around 9, 10 p.m. Central Time. You start getting some convection initiating here in southern Kansas into northern Oklahoma. And you can see it kind of builds kind of downward, southwesterly, as we expand through Kansas. You can see maybe we get some starts with a few like discrete supercells that may pose a potential for some large hail threat, but everything goes upscale pretty quickly here.
I guess through Oklahoma City, really, 3, 4 in the morning?
Yeah, very late night threat. Hopefully the tornado threat stays limited with this, because this is not the time you want to have tornadoes moving through populated areas.
So I'm just going to pull up a sounding from this. Decent sized, nice curved photograph on showing that would support tornadoes. Nice warm air advection in the low levels. But one thing I am concerned about with the tornado threat, how much it really is this inversion in the low levels of the atmosphere. And when you have an inversion, that can really help to cap off those tornadoes. So this would have to break through the inversion to really get tornadoes going. If this were to not be there, yeah, we could have some pretty significant problems, even with the QLCS. The shear vectors I have noticed are pretty perpendicular to that line. I mean, the line's right here, and the shear vectors are pointed pretty perpendicular, which is pretty supportive for QLCS tornadoes. So it is important that you do have a severe weather plan tonight and that you know where to go if a tornado warning is issued for any area. And I do expect tornado warnings to be issued along this line, along with some damaging wind gusts as well.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that wholeheartedly. Like Peyton was saying, when you get these perpendicular shear vectors, that usually is a recipe to have tornadoes from a QLCS or a line of severe thunderstorms. But we're really hoping that cap holds strong and keeps the tornado threat at least out of populated areas through the overnight hours. We want to move into tomorrow?
Yeah, let's talk about tomorrow because this is the highest risk day. We want to, back this out. I mean,
we'll start with the SBC. You can see they have really.
Oh,
that's expanded. This is the new outlook.
Yeah, brand new. We're seeing this outlook for the first time here, and they have really expanded the enhanced risk for tomorrow. I believe it's gone northwest. Yeah,
that is gone northwest.
Yeah, I think they're also trying to look for.
They may be accounting for that. Just QLCS moving through
the morning. Yep, I would agree with that. Yep. So the hail, they're sticking with 30% with the significant risk. And the hail threat definitely seems to be lesser tomorrow, but very much an expanded enhanced risk for tomorrow over the northeast Texas into southern Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and even southwest portions of Alabama and very western portion of the Florida Panhandle. So we'll use the NAM, the 3 kilometer NAM for this, since it goes a little bit further out than the HRRR, and we'll move through. We'll see the QLCS for tonight. You can see it moving through tomorrow, and it's just going to keep on going. I'm actually showing some prefrontal supercells in this one. Yeah, that would be a little bit of a concern for the tornado threat. We'll pull up the sounding out ahead of this one. It doesn't necessarily show the greatest tornado or tornadic environment, but you can see if a storm trends the right way with a photograph that looks like this, you would have a recipe for big problems. If one were to take root and really get its act together.
Yeah, one thing, that is a concern tomorrow is the instability. Normally with these southern events, especially at this time of the year, is how far north does the warm sector really expand. The NAM 3K has some, especially closer to the Gulf Coast you are. Also note, up towards in Kansas, it's looking at the cold core risk that could also. Those tend to produce a couple tornadoes as well. So even the SBC has that highlighted in their tornado probs as well up there, really along that triple point essentially.
Yep.
And that's usually, you get some moisture up there, the triple point usually does produce tornadoes. And I do believe there could be a couple littler tornadoes up there, but the big tornado threat, here's the CSU for tomorrow. I think, is this the 12Z run or is this the 0Z? This is the 12Z.
Yep.
Yeah, it has a big 10% across Louisiana mainly and some parts of southwest Mississippi, 5% extending all the way into Alabama. I just want to pull up the trough that is responsible for this on the GFS. For example, where is the GFS? I want to just pull up the wind just to show the trough placement and see if this can give any clue. This is our trough, and it's a pretty sizable trough for this time of the year. I mean, it looks like it's even taking a little bit more of a negative tilt with that as well.
And I also want to bring up the low-level jet. Yeah, so especially as we head into the night, we can expect to see this ramp up, and we're going to be looking at our 850 millibar winds moving anywhere from high 50s upwards of 70 knots, and that's roughly what you're looking for if you want to see nighttime tornadoes.
Yeah, I'm going to move this over more to the southeast U.S. sector to really see this. One thing I just want to look at is those shear vectors, even with the QLCS, to see if they're more perpendicular or they are more parallel, because that can make a difference between tornadoes as well. I'll use the NAM for this, and then I'm going to run this out. Okay, this is tomorrow's setup. So this is a little bit more parallel to good. The storms will be more oriented this way, and this is more parallel. So maybe this isn't as favorable for a mass outbreak of QLCS tornadoes, but any prefrontal supercells, because when these get started in the afternoon, the shear vectors are a little more perpendicular. So if there's any confluence bands that a prefrontal supercell can use, that could, allow for your stronger tornado threat. But it will be how far north does the instability extend to, for this.
Absolutely.
I will say, I remember this Tuesday specifically has been one of the big highlighted days on the SBC for the past week. They're day 6 out of 30%, which it's one of 8 or 9 days since they've done this in the past 10 or 11 years. They've had it highlighted as 30% in the long range like this. So it's not very often you see confidence of an enhanced 30% risk 6 days out, and then you still have that enhanced risk. And it could be a pretty potent event if things go right.
It absolutely can, and these things also have that. You don't get the instability.
Yeah.
We've seen many of these events that look great have not done much, but we've also seen these events look like the same and produce a lot of severe weather. So we'll have to really determine what really does go on tonight, or tonight really does help to determine maybe what tomorrow does as well.
Absolutely.
But the severe weather's still not done.
Yeah, we still have more to talk
We still have another risk.
Let's go. Let's start with the SBC for day 3. We're looking at just a slight risk. A lot of this area is going to be shrouded in cloud cover as the storm moves up to the northwest. And then I'll back out on the models to try to show more of what that's expected to look like. We'll use the longer range NAM. And let's just do the reflectivity.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's tonight's threat. Moving
There's
into
tomorrow,
and then you can see that we really get rain across most of that area through the mid-morning, and the NAM tries to fire up thunderstorms in behind that initial shot. This is the one that we're the most uncertain about, at least in terms of the extent of the severe weather. Certainly down in the southern end of the threat seems more likely, and this definitely appears to be more of a damaging wind threat as opposed to maybe tornadoes and hail. I'm not sure that there will be much in the way of hail at all. HREF doesn't go out that far, and then we'll look at CSU.
Yeah, even the CSU is not very excited about it, and I actually tend to agree with this. Lapse rates don't look to be very good, so hail I wouldn't really be concerned about. I mean, really, the most realistic spot for the best severe weather would be across the Carolinas. They'll have the most time to destabilize. Farther north you get, you're going to be more shrouded in clouds. You maybe could get a rumble of thunder, but I'm not really anticipating severe weather with it as well. Tomorrow is definitely the main player compared to. It could be tonight too.
I'd argue tonight.
Tonight and tomorrow are definitely the two most concerning nights. But again, some severe storms, and there's not a lot of Cape that comes up with the NAM, especially when we're up in the Pennsylvania. Not too much Cape at all. Mainly confined again down to maybe Southern Virginia, the Carolinas.
You can see a pretty decent overlap here between the highest values of Cape in the Carolinas and up to Virginia, and where the CSU prints their highest wind probabilities. So you can definitely deduce that the threat is kind of limited by how much instability will be available for these storms. We pull up a sounding. You can see the photograph's not nearly as curved as they will be tonight or tomorrow, which really puts a damper on any sort of tornado threat that you could have. And you can see instability is relatively modest, so you definitely could get damaging winds out of this sounding. But as far as tornadoes go, I definitely see Wednesday being the least likely to produce any tornadoes.
Yeah, I would also tend to agree with that. So, is there anything else that we have to want to look at before we wrap this up?
I think we covered everything.
I think we covered everything as well. So
I would say just if you live in Oklahoma, Texas, or any of the southeast states for tomorrow, make sure you have a plan in place in case a tornado warning is issued, because it definitely looks like there could be, especially tonight. Those nocturnal tornadoes are always very dangerous.
Yeah, and even tomorrow there could be some nocturnal tornadoes as well. So yes, of course, have that severe weather plan in place. Make sure you have ways to receive alerts overnight, including weather radio. Your wireless emergency alerts are enabled on your phone, or a generic weather app. You will be fine. Just heed warning and tune to local officials when those tornado warnings are issued. So with that, that'll do it for this edition of Weather Watch. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.